let's start, as we always do, on Bets and Banter with the first fight of the night. We've got Josefine Knutsson taking on Marnic Mann. This is kind of the hodgepodge, random fight of the night, right? You've got Josefine Knutsson, who was just told, you're not ready. Go back to the regional scene, maybe get some more experience. Just kidding. You're signed. Welcome to the UFC, kid. So then it's like, all right, quick switch up there from Dana White and co. But in any case, she won the fight clearly. At the time, I've been doing pretty well on Contender Series in terms of my reads, brother, but I didn't see that coming. I thought Isis Verbeek was going to keep it more competitive. She was coming out of the Biggie Boy camp. Whenever I see people on Contender Series with proximity to UFC stars, it always gives me some pause. Do I really want to fade this person? Even you think about AJ from Contender Series last week with the Bryce Mitchell connection. It always just makes me a little bit more hesitant to fade these people on Contender Series because I know it's one of the things the UFC is looking for. People that are being vouched for by their UFC training partners, like, hey, bring this guy onto the show. Like, I think he could do well in the UFC. In any case, we're looking here at a Marnic Mann who got finished brutally on the Contender Series when she was on the show, right? She went there, she fought Bruna Brazil, and that's a tough matchup. She's a big girl, she's long, she's awkward, head kicked her brutally, finished her, knocked her out. Not something you're used to seeing in, WMMA especially. So when I look at this fight on paper, do I see that same kind of, danger factor from Knutson on the feet necessarily? Not quite, but she does have a pretty good volume. She's a pretty consistent striker. She looked good in that last fight against a girl who has a ton of experience in the stand-up primarily. And she's been doing a better job of integrating takedowns as she's worked her way into MMA. You saw back in her old striking fight, she would sweep the feet and do things like that. But now I think she's getting a little bit more effective on top. And so when I look at the fact that she's like plus 110 or plus 120 or whatever it is to win ITD, and then she's like plus 800, plus 900, whatever it is to win by sub, that does stand out to me as a little bit mathematically silly, right? We're talking about a women's fight first and foremost. We're talking about girls that don't tend to finish that much by knockout. So I don't feel like that's necessarily an accurate line. Marnic Mann is a purple belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but I also felt like the reason she got head kicked by Bruna Brazil is she was starting to slow down a little bit in that fight, wasn't really confident in her cardio in that extended contest. So she's been an athlete all her life. She looks like she has many interests outside of fighting, let's say, politely. But I just feel like when she's fighting, she brings her best effort to the cage. Just don't know that she's physically cut out for this weight class. She's very small, I think like 5 foot. And I'm all for short kings and queens out there that are trying to make it in this world. But I'm telling you that I just look at this one a little bit skeptically, where Knutson, do I think she should be this wide a favorite? I mean, that's just not the kind of thing I invest on. If you guys ever watch on the show, you'll never hear me touting like, yo, this minus 600 women's favorite is like exactly what I'm looking for. But, I just feel like in this spot, those are the ways that I would look to target it. Is like, it feels like Knutson is being set up with a winnable fight here potentially. So the things I would look at are Knutson ITD, Knutson sub, or the fight ends by sub. And I haven't bet anything on this fight, but those are some of the looks that I was, eyeing down here and going to investigate further. How about you? What do you think about this fight, brother?
Yeah, so my question is to you is, well, just to everybody is, do we think Marnic Mann is durable enough to survive? Like, what does she do well to survive? Because I don't think she has any path to victory in this fight. I don't think she's going to be able to outstrike Knutson. And like you said, bro, like she's definitely improving in the grappling as well. She wound up in the clinch a lot versus Verbeek, and I think that was a little bit of a knock on her from the commentators and maybe from the Dana White himself. But she looks strong there, and that's where Marnic Mann wants the fight. So if she's not going to have success there, I could see her eating some elbows and some knees as well from the Muay Thai style of um, Knutson, and she could finish her for sure. But if Marnic Mann is durable enough, I want to find a way to get this number down. And I'm going to look at the spread here, man, because even if she gets this done, I think it's at least a dominant decision at worst. And I'm getting minus 260 on the minus 3.5 on a minus 800 favorite. It's a no-brainer to me and probably one of my favorite bets on the card. I think she just outstrikes Marnic Mann completely. Hopefully avoids the clinch, but even if she does wind up there, I think she's strong enough and smart enough to avoid the submission, which is the only way I would worry that Mann winds up winning this fight. But it's an early prelim, and I think this is a good setup spot for a girl in Knutson who's part of the Hamzat Shemaev regime, the Wolf Pack, I believe they call it, and he's coming up on a UFC pay-per-view very soon. We've seen UFC get these prospects and flip them right away on these pay-per-view cards. I think Godinez was one of them. It was really quick, but this is another one where if she could fight a few times, the UFC gets to know her. I think this is a good setup spot for her, and Hamzat will probably be in the crowd somewhere. So I'll be going with that -3.5, man. Put in a parlay, bet it straight, whatever.
Yeah, I don't mind that look at all. I tend to not bet point spreads, just like as a rule, it's not a market I tend to look at. But in terms of this fight, that does seem like a good way to buy it down. WMMA is one of the only times I have done that in the past. I remember Andrade versus Lemos. I hammered the Andrade minus points handicap because it was like a discounted version of her money line, her ITD, these kind of things. So I definitely view that as a way to target these, egregiously priced WMMA fights where, the only thing I worry about is like a banana peel in round one, where Knutson is not like the most sophisticated grappler, to your point, trains with the right people. I think she just has better cardio, better process, better athlete. I think eventually she will outlast this woman, probably because of damage as well. Damage taxes your cardio. So if Marnic Mann's getting beat up in this fight, she could just get tired and then get finished. But in the early going, she is a purple belt from the United States against the European grappler. I'm always like, oh God, like this could look like, she gets the back in the first round and you're just like, because that was my one concern with her coming into that Verbeek fight is Verbeek was training in the US. And I was like, I mean, what exactly do I make of that? Maybe she had something to offer and it turns out she didn't. But in that case, it's like, she's not somebody that grew up here and whatever. She's kind of bounced all over the place. Marnic Mann grew up playing like softball and all this stuff. I found her old Twitter account and everything, man. My social media research took me down some dark rabbit holes this week, but we've spent far too long on this fight. So